about where you're calling in from, which tribal land you're calling in from, and add some respect for that. Let's make this as fun and engaging, and to our name, inclusive as possible. So Mentor Washington, for those that don't know, is a public-private partnership where our mission is to promote, support, and expand quality mentoring, fostering positive youth development, academic success, and job and career readiness. We approach everything with a race, social justice, equity, and inclusive lens. Today is a diversity, equity, and inclusion town hall. And we're going to present our survey results to the mentor community, that's y'all, and hear from mentoring leaders from around the state that provide young people with equitable programs, many of us whom are BIPOC individuals. This will be a time of rallying and reminding us all of the work that needs to be done. I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague, Laura, who's gonna take us through some survey results.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We started, doing race equity and inclusion work within the mentoring field has been something that Mentor Washington has had their eye on for the past 3 or so years. And starting in April of this year, we were finally able to kind of really begin this work. And we started with a survey. And the survey was filled out and completed by over 50 mentoring organizations throughout the state. So for those of you that participated, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you should have received your results along with the aggregated results from the entire survey. If you participated in that and haven't received those, please let me know and we'll make sure to get those out to you today. But to start off, we just kind of wanted to go through those results to see where we're starting. What does the landscape of mentoring and mentoring programs look like with a race, equity, inclusive lens? Where are we starting? And that way we can figure out where we need to go. So just to get started with the survey, we asked everybody to share with us the racial and ethnic demographic background and breakdown of their mentors and their mentees. So for all of the programs that participated, the mentors percentage-wise are in dark blue and the mentee percentages are in yellow. As you can see, most race and ethnic groups, the percentage of young people, the percentage of mentees is higher than the percentage of their mentors. So what we're seeing is that a larger number of young people of color are being mentors, and we're not matching that with the number of the same percentages of mentees. So we can also see, and I think this is pretty well known and something that we've kind of known in the mentoring world for a while, is that we do skew very heavily white Caucasian mentors. So we'll kind of discuss that a little bit later, but we just wanted to highlight this and just see that it hasn't changed a whole time in the past. So this is definitely an area that we can grow in. Strengths from the survey. The survey didn't show us that we were doing nothing well. We are doing some things well, and so we wanted to highlight those. For the majority of programs, they identified that their staff can identify power and privilege benefits that white folks are experiencing. And so can identify a core set of ways and can identify a comprehensive set of ways are drastically higher than the others. And the same with the staff's knowledge about youth and mentee discrimination and disadvantages that they're experiencing. So we have this basic understanding as a mentor community of what our youth are experiencing, and that's a great place to start. The other strength that we found from the survey was that most programs are classified as being open and safe environments for these discussions to happen. Whether they're being scheduled regularly or kind of just have this open environment for it, most programs are doing a really good job of this. So awesome, good job. Now for the areas that we can grow in, and we'll send all of these slides to you all after this. We have your registration information, so we can send you all of this later so you can kind of see and really dive deep in this. But some areas for growth, we can definitely improve in the number of programs that have race, equity, and inclusion and cultural competency in their mentor training. Moving from incomplete or insufficient inclusion to consistently use will go a long ways in having more equitable mentoring for our young people. Also implementing strategies for increased mentor diversity. Again, this kind of goes back to the sheer percentage of white mentors that we see in our programs compared to the number of white youth that we mentor. Diverse and representative communications. So this is less within the match and more, how are we representing our communities and the young people that we're serving in our communications out into the world? What is that looking like? Most organizations said that they're not doing a very good regular job of being diverse and representative in their communications. And that's one way that we can really kind of move mentoring from this space of white saviorism to really valuing the communities that these young people are coming from, and what strengths are they bringing to these communities, as well as community collaboration and input. I know this is something that a lot of programs have said they struggle with, is reaching communities in a way that they're receiving feedback and input. And so how can we kind of alter our communications that we're getting that collaboration? Identifying mentor and mentee racial demographics. Some programs are doing this in sharing their breakdowns, and some aren't. I thought that the light blue was interesting, that a lot of programs are completing demographics, but they're not available for review. If we're not seeing what our programs are looking like, and that's not something that we can have a tangible look at, how can we know that we're changing and improving in that way? And then with boards and councils, 13 and 17 said that they're either not diverse or minimally diverse, or that they endorse racial diversity with not much change. And I think it's fair to say that having boards that reflect our communities and reflect the folks that we're serving can go a long way in providing culturally appropriate resources and programs for those youth. Strategies for balancing staff and leadership diversity. This one was really in the middle. It's not a strength, but it's definitely not one of the areas that we're doing the worst in. So, but there is some room for growth to fully developed and moderately developed strategies for balancing staff and leadership diversity. Are the folks in our organizations that we're paying, are they looking like the folks that we're serving? And then policies for staff of color, retention and promotion. If in having staff that are in leadership roles and higher up in organizations that look and represent the youth that we're serving, that can only increase the quality of programs that we're providing. And then REI professional development. Definitely some room for growth in this. I know a lot of our programs are small, and so maybe they don't have a lot of resources to provide race equity and inclusion resources for their staff. So is that a way, is that an area that Mentor Washington can really help in? Is that a way that we can kind of help supplement those resources so that your staff are receiving those development and getting that knowledge from somewhere? So I think there's a lot of insight into these surveys. And I think for Mentor Washington, how can we step in and help move some of these from the blues to the red and the yellow? So we're looking forward to, in the next couple months to year and a half, really kind of getting on the ground and working with you guys in this area. So now we're going to move into hearing from some programs who are doing some of these components really well. And I want to say, sorry, my computer just locked. James, I'll kind of move it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Laura, for that. If anyone has any responses to what Laura just shared, please put those into the chat. Next up, we're going to invite some representatives from organizations that we're serving, as Laura stated, and just get their feedback on certain issues. First up, Carlicia Bell from Phenomenal She. I would love for you to introduce yourself, even though I just said your name, but shout out to you. And can you talk about the implications of recruitment that you're experiencing?
Yes, so hello everyone. Thanks for having me this evening. Happy to be here. I'm Carlicia Bell, Executive Director of Phenomenal She, and we are a mentoring program for young women of color in Federal Way, Washington. And so Phenomenal She, we're very intentional in who we recruit to become mentors. Our program focuses on providing culturally relevant services in all areas. This especially applies to our mentors. Phenomenal She serves young women of color, as I just stated, ages 12 to 24, that has historically been undervalued and underserved by society and in their communities. They encounter biases and injustices at school, where there are proven racial and gender disparities in the application of disciplinary practices, and they are unable to see themselves or feel validated when teachers and others are not able to identify or empathize with the obstacles they face. It is important to acknowledge the impact of systemic oppression, marginalization, and inequality. So it has been proven that youth are more likely to choose a mentor of the same race. We know that that is not always possible. However, it is very important to always consider the needs of the youth. We do that by doing a mentee questionnaire to determine exactly what the youth are looking for in a mentor. And so in our recruiting efforts, we attend community events, as well as reaching out to like BIPOC employee networks within companies such as Amazon and Wells Fargo to recruit BIPOC mentors. So that's what some of the things that we've done in the past. So when a candidate is interested in becoming a mentor, they fill out an application, and then we conduct an interview to discuss our mission, services, the commitment that we are looking for, them to have. I'm sorry, I'm reading here and I just lost my place.
All good, take your time.
My computer is doing what Laura's computer is doing, amongst other things. So we have a very transparent conversation with a potential mentor. It's very important that we get this right, because our youth has already been failed enough. We ask for our mentors to commit at least a 1 year of service. And we do this because we know that it takes time to break down barriers to build authentic trust and relationships with our youth. When joining Mentor Washington, we noticed that there were not questions surrounding cultural groups or service providers looking for culturally relevant mentors. And so we want to make sure that our message comes across, that we are looking for those things without sounding discriminatory, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much Phenomenal She and our efforts for recruitment and the implications of recruitment. So basically, to sum it up, for our program, BIPOC mentors are needed because we know that it's important and in making sure that our youth are successful.
Thank you, Carlicia. Appreciate that, and agree 100% with those sentiments and statements.
Thank you.
Yes. We're going to keep it moving. Turn it over to my friend Mike Smith, who works alongside Indigenous communities.
Yeah, thank you very much, James. And I'm joined here today with Mr. Jared Kapp, and Jared and I are really partners in this venture, and we've done quite a bit of work together. And where we started, and this probably isn't a big shock to anybody in this room, but the relationship between Indigenous communities and public school systems are difficult at best. And there's lots of historical trauma and current day practices that contribute to those, a continuance of cultural misrepresentation or out and out just hard feelings between school districts and tribes. So Jared and I work really closely with the Nisqually tribe, and the Nisqually tribe has a group of phenomenal leaders who really have an interest in getting into schools and making progressive change. So we focused our mentorship program, started really alongside the Nisqually tribe last year, and we worked with the tribe to identify problems of practice and to really have a lot of value in seeing mentors in the school and mentors from the tribe working together to support kids. And the optics of that alone are really important, that our kids see our communities working together to better them and to provide for their community and provide them with skills for their communities. Last year, kind of before we got shut down, unfortunately, we were doing a lot with robotics, and the idea was that we were working on some projects between the tribe, the mentors, and the mentees with underwater robotics and identifying possible issues to salmon habitat restoration. So really, we really focused on a community-based program that serves and benefits the progression of the Indigenous nation. With that, I'm going to bounce it off over to Jared, who can kind of talk a little bit about his role.
Yeah, so among the many hats that I get to wear for our district, I'm our Native Student Program Specialist and our Native Studies Program Lead. And so a big portion of our funding comes from Title VI. Many of our districts in the state of Washington have a Title VI Indian education program. And every day we work on providing education support services for Native students, but also a big portion of what we do is to work to identify our Native students. There's a lot of different ways that they can kind of hide or be underrepresented within conventional school data. And so when Mike had this great idea, he reached out. We had to make sure that we were able to reach out to as many Native students as possible. So we set to work on really having a plan for identification, and then really just working on helping to facilitate the building of relationships with tribal partners, as well as I think really taking the time to honor the process of getting there. It's really easy to get really kind of focused on the outcome in the project, but definitely in our communities, it's really about how we get there that's as important, if not more important sometimes. So once we were able to kind of, you know, like build that trust and that relationship, we were able to go and build on bigger and better things, and to really center Indigenous voice as we developed this program. And that's one thing that's been really nice about working with Mentor Washington is the flexibility that we have in developing these programs, that we can be more adaptive and more holistic based on student and community needs, and you know, especially the sort of fluctuating world that we live in today. And it's really about that outcome, about working with the communities and working with students to provide a program that they see themselves in, that they can support and can be engaged in. And then also just providing the sort of wraparound services and points of contact to work with the students and outreach with them outside of just the days of the week that we were able to come together. But just being able to have that sense of space and to have that tribal support really helped to have a really impressive attendance for an after-school program. And it gave a good space for students to come in, be who they are, engage in something fun and interesting, and at the same time, you know, do work that was valued by the school system. And so we're just looking to continue that good work as we move forward. And it's been something that both our district, the students, and the tribe has been very happy to work together on.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Mike. You know, you're talking about services and how those are, for lack of a better word, inadequate at many times, especially serving the young people that we serve. Our next guest from Funhouse Commons will talk about their work in examining critical gaps in services and their work with LACIMA. Trillium?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Great to be here. Hi.
Yeah.
Familiar, more local faces and unfamiliar regional faces. So I'm just going to do a brief intro to sort of what led us to partner with LACIMA, Equity Institute, and then Sergio and Brenda will take it from there. A little bit of background to the program, and that focus on gaps and gaps analysis is that, I mean, you know, the main takeaway is that we can't, I as a program coordinator or project manager can't identify gaps by myself. So in January, my background is in strategic prevention, and I'm the project manager of a prevention coalition here. So with that background, which basically means working upstream of problem behaviors in any community and figuring out what stakeholders need to be at the table to see what is happening on the ground to work together. We brought together our English language learners, teacher person, and another teacher at the high school, and a community member who works for the Camp Orkila camp on Orcas, with shared concern that they were seeing consistent disparity in the test performance of Latinx students versus non-Latinx students on Orcas, as well as persistent, just not the same level of participation in after-school clubs, despite really despite years of effort in these different ways that teachers were trying to get kids involved. And so we worked on a strategy of who needs to be at the table to figure out how we get to the goals that we could envision around that. And what we saw was building strong base for parent advocacy, so that we had parent voices that were ready to be stepping in and advocating for their kids and feeling empowered. And then also student empowerment and school empowerment. How can we support the school to support our students? And so in that bucket was the student empowerment. And one thing that we saw as a gap from our limited eyes was like representative mentoring. I've been the coordinator of our mentor program on Orcas, and I now support that staff member directly. It's been in existence for about 20 years. And on Orcas, for whatever reason, this is not the case on Lopez. It's not even the case on San Juan, but Latinx kids have not become mentees in our program consistently. And it's been really hard to convince Latinx members of the community to mentor. And it's been, you know, like I have a close relationship with a lot of those parents, and I would like I tried, you know, and to get the kids in or the adults, and the adults would be like, oh no, I don't want to, because I don't want to piss off this person. It's like we're small. We have 30 kids per class, per graduating class. So what we decided we wanted to do in that youth mentoring or that youth empowerment bucket was create a pathway toward mentorship, so that older youth would mentor younger youth and would have someone in the community, the wider community, to look up to as a mentor as well. So we reached out to La Cima, and they were like, oh, well, this just sounds like this program that we do every year. What's it called? Dare to Dream. Dare to Dream, and they had just adapted it to a virtual platform. So with that, I will hand it off.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Sergio Barrera. So I'm here representing La Cima and Equity Institute, but I also work for the Lake Washington School District. I'm the Equity and Family Support Facilitator. And so when Trillium called us to get this program kicked off at Orcas Island, one of the things that I noticed was that, like, coming from a huge district and seeing the numbers at Orcas Island being resembled in terms of how many disengaged, well, quote unquote, what the system defines disengaged students as, was they were relatively mirroring each other in terms of Black students, Latinx students, and Indigenous students in terms of who was not engaging in online learning. And part of that comes from the lack of culture responsive teaching, and also like the educational system not understanding that this isn't a normal classroom. There's different things that need to be addressed. And so that is the approach we're taking in terms of how we're developing and centering student voice in our mentoring space. So we're taking a very collectivist approach in how we're developing our relationships, right? So instead of having a competitive individual culture within our programs, we're making sure the greater good of the group, because it's such a small community, is much more important than the individual success. But that doesn't mean that's not important. It just means that we feel like if we stress the unity portion of it and having them being successful together, it'll trickle down into having them like believe that they are greater than what these numbers are telling them. And so how do we do that? So our first session starts with, you know, introducing ourselves, creating a relationship between us and the students. That isn't a, you know, I'm here as a power structure. We don't want to have that, right? And so when we introduce the bilingual portion of the curriculum, we're not centering a certain like Spanish that is the ideal, which is typically Castellano, which is a very white version of the language, in other words, proper. And so we like to let students express themselves the way they express themselves at home without correcting their language. We ask them what exactly it is they want to learn about and what they want to touch on and things that they want to talk about. And so we've gone from middle school students and high school students, anything from, we want to talk about toxic machismo culture within the Latinx people. We want to talk about racism. And just this past week, we talked about self-care, toxic positivity, and radical self-love, right? And when I was their age, I made sure I expressed, like, I had no idea what self-care was. I had no idea what radical self-love was. And I was just highly impressed with like the conversations these youth are coming from into the table if we just take time to step back and soak in their knowledge and believe in youth wisdom, right? So the way we spread them out is that we divide them into committees, and you have a high school mentor that reflects them, that looks like them, who is leading their conversations with them. And we provide them kind of like a guided talking points. and then we come back as a big group to kind of discuss as a whole. And so Brenda and I aren't typically the ones leading the content. It's the youth leading content for youth. And then we come up in open sharing. And we also step in and out of breakout rooms as well. But yeah, Brenda, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and kind of fill in the gaps of what I missed.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am so grateful to be here. My name is Brenda Ochoa. I am undocumented and I currently work for Equity Institute. I'm their programs director, and our founder is Vincent Perez. So just to answer some of the questions, and I'm sorry that we're taking a little bit of time, but we have to leave by 2:30 because that's the time that our mentor program runs through. So just to answer some of the questions on the agenda, we are adapting to COVID-related closures by creating a website. So we have a website specifically for Orcas Island where the students have all the information there, our links, everything that we use is there, and some helpful videos about Zoom, Google Meets, anything that they need is there. What is working is us building trust with them. We're there not as an authority figure, but as a friend, as a mentor. And also that our leadership or our mentorship program is bilingual. That's also helping our students because all of them are Latinx students. What isn't working is just talking about topics that we're interested in or that we have in our curriculum, but just taking a step back and asking them, what do they want to talk about? Especially right now, it's such a hard time. What do we need to be successful is participation and engagement. That is what we thrive on. We want these students to show up, not just the mentors, but also our students. And so we're focusing on that and also just working on helping them not feel isolated. I think right now everyone is working from home. They can't leave the house. And so us creating that sense of community within our meetings is what's helping a lot. What is standing in our way is representation, that they don't have students that look like them. I'm so sorry. And so we have to work on representation. Sergio and I are undocumented. We're Latinx folks as well, so that helps in that sense. Also, the educational system is in our way. It's not being so inclusive, and it's not helping these students feel like they should be there. And then thirdly, the involvement with parents. We talk with parents to explain what our program is about, because if we have parents on board, they're going to support these students being there, showing up, and just having them either become mentors or become mentees. So that's a little bit about us. I'll add our information in the chat if anybody has any questions. We are here to answer, and we're here to support each other. Thank you so much. I'll pass it back to James.
Thank you, Brenda, Sergio, and Shirley. That was lovely. It reminds me of quote unquote African proverb, which is, if you want to go far, go alone. But if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together, right? So what you're talking about is like community, bringing people together, right? Very much in the spirit of Kendrick Lamar, and I love myself and I love my community. So thank you, I appreciate that. Speaking of community, I'm gonna turn it over to my brother Clinton Taylor, who's gonna talk about working within juvenile justice systems. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yep, here we are. Thanks, man.
You know, as old timers, we're a little technically slow. But thank you. I appreciate this opportunity today. So a little bit about our program. So we're a financial literacy program, a mentorship program with a financial literacy component. So I used to run a financial literacy program across the Puget Sound. I've worked with a lot of the community-based organizations between Everett and Vancouver, Washington. Most of the banks, credit unions, investment firms, I pretty much know the people there. And we were working primarily with K-12 students. And then we got a little bit into doing some adult work because I was actually teaching a class myself to the women out at Purdy that were getting ready to transition out. And so how Your Money Matters came about, the program I founded about 4 years ago, was that students were asking for more than what we were giving them in the classroom. They were asking for support. Okay, now we've done a budget class. Who's going to sit and help me put my budget together? Or now that we've done a credit class, who's going to sit with me and help me pull my credit report and go over my credit report with me? And so our program was designed to take the materials from the classroom while the students were applying those tools, and give them support through mentorship, through group mentoring or one-on-one mentoring based on the students' requests. And so we shifted away from K-12 and started focusing more primarily on 16 to 25-year-olds, because those are the young people that right now, for most of us, we know they're living in the moment. Most of them are young parents or transitioning out of facilities and so on and so on. And so one of the areas that I've always had a passion about, because I was justice involved myself for quite a while in my younger days, and it's always been the reentry population. And so when the opportunity came about for us to go into the facilities here with a partnership with DCYF and Mentor Washington to pilot this financial literacy courses in our mentoring program, it's been a big hit. But obviously there's obstacles with us having to move our programming solely online, and sometimes dealing with institutions, things are out of our control. I don't know, anything can happen. A fight can happen, or kids just don't, want to show up because it's not mandatory. But we've been able to make some really solid connections with the students there. And one of the things that they mentioned in a survey that was recently done, we had 3 youth who presented. One was a Native American young lady, one was a African American young man, and an African American young lady. And they stressed the thing that they missed the most was, one, having trusted adults, someone to come in and engage them that looked like them, to bring information in that was relevant to them, and then have someone to start helping them to prepare to transition out. And so with our mentorship program and the way that we've addressed this is, we want to work with them to start helping to build and develop those money management habits and skills that a lot of us adults are kind of still struggling with. But I just wanted to share with you just really quickly here. This is kind of like an overarching data, but it says like 56% of parents said that their children that are 18 to 24 have never had any involvement in the family finances at all. And 69% of parents said that they've been reluctant to even talk to their kids about personal finance. And 35% of the students said that they know their parents are uncomfortable talking to them about money. And so then what does that look like with our justice involved youth? Well, there's a book by Alexis Harris, and I don't know if any of you've read it, but it's called A Pound of Flesh. And just in the state of Washington alone, individuals are released and coming out with an average of about $9,000 worth of legal fines. And there's about 19,000 new debts that are accumulated every year from our justice involved youth and adults who come back into the community. And so what does that look like for our young people? It's trying to prepare them to get ready to come home, but also looking at their ability to manage money, and do they understand how money works, and so on and so on and so on, because that's a huge part of their transition, and they asked for that. And so we went in to partner with them, and we're helping them to establish bank accounts, because 8% of the people in the state of Washington are unbanked. Another 12% are underbanked, which means they have bank accounts, but they're still using other payday loan and check cashing places. And most of the young people that we work with, their families don't use banks. They don't trust banks. They won't go into a bank. So part of our program is when they come in to be mentored with us and go through our program, we have a session where we take them on a field trip to the bank. Well, we haven't been able to do that lately, but part of the programming is we actually, with their mentors, they actually take them to the bank. They actually sit down with them in the bank and help them open a bank account. And we give them $25 to $50 to do that. We also incentivize them by giving them so many points and financial stipends for attending classes. So the barriers, obviously, I've heard some today, is just getting the students to follow through on a lot of the things that they committed to doing, because it's their financial plan. We help them set financial goals. We help them set budgets. We help them with bank accounts. We just got a program where we've added to our program where we're going to help them establish credit cards to build credit. We have a secured credit card program that we just implemented. And so it's really just getting them to follow through on a lot of these things. And then dealing with institutions, some of the issues that you see obviously is a lot of the students in there feel disconnected, obviously, from the community. They feel disconnected from the staff in there. There's a lot of staff issues with, race, and because most of the staff are white and most of the students are students of color. And so there's a huge disconnection there. So whenever we come in and we work with them and they see us, there's just, there's this connection. The Native American young lady, she talked about wanting to see more healing circles and drumming circles and folks that, represent their community and look like them. And so we've been able to do a lot of work, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Thank you, Clinton. Appreciate that. You're doing the work that needs to be done, man. I remember when I was working at Rikers in New York, connections are so important. And I would teach clowning to students or to these young people. And they, I'd walk in and they'd be like, man, what you doing in here? And I was like, we're going to juggle. I'm like, man, we ain't doing this. And then 5 minutes in, we're juggling, we're building connections, we're having laughter. And then they're like, all right, so when I get out of here, what can I do? And I'm glad you're setting up these financial literacy programs because that's the next step, Yeah. Thank you. We're going to introduce my brother, Claude Green, who's going to talk about opportunities and workforce mentoring. Claude, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am a partner of Mentor Washington in a different sense. I'm actually employed with Costco Wholesale. I have been for the last 37 years. However, I've been a loan executive and working with Mentor Washington as the Director of Workforce Development and Corporate Engagement over the past 4 years. And my focus while working at Mentor Washington and working with that wonderful staff of people is around how we get young people, particularly opportunity youth, those in between the ages that was just mentioned, 16, 18 to 24, 25-year-olds into the workforce and in the talent pool, because let's face it, corporate America is looking for top talent. And if you aren't developing your skills at an early age to be prepared to go into the workforce with a skill level so that you can grow and develop within that company and build so that you can actually make a career in that company, or at least a livable wage to be able to afford navigating the life and workspace, then you're going to run into some real difficulties. And unfortunately, there's not enough mentoring in the workplace for young people going in, especially when they come in isolated as like Clinton was saying. A lot of times they come in without the network of support. Again, their livelihood is based on what am I going to do if I've got a job? Where am I going to stay after I get off? How am I going to get to work? Because my transportation is either non-existent or depending on public transportation. All things that cost. And so basically what we're trying to do is get them mentoring in the workplace to help kind of navigate both the work site and some of their own personal situations in their lives. And so for me, that makes mentoring in the workplace a priority. It's something that I'm working on at Costco right now. And because if you are familiar with the corporate world, oftentimes they have mentor programs within their systems, but they're primarily developing talent that they already have that exists. It's not so much that they're mentoring those who are just coming into the workplace that really need the mentoring at that front line type position. And so oftentimes they get lost. They don't start looking at career pathways. They aren't in a position to ask the questions about how do I get to the next level. They aren't in positions to say, what do I need to do to be recognized for that next promotion? And these are all the things that the other employees who do have that network of support are getting. So it's imperative that we get mentoring in the workplace that can relate to and build relationships with these young people so that they can build their self-awareness, that they can build their knowledge, that they can build their confidence, so that they now start working within the system and want to stay a part of it so that they can grow and develop and become an integral part of whatever that system is doing. And so I'm pretty excited to be part of this conversation today because, of course, what's happened over the last 9 months with the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, a lot of what is being discussed here is really coming to the forefront, and we're recognizing the gap that is being created through this pandemic and, of course, the bigotry pandemic that we have. So it's imperative that we get corporate companies involved in establishing mentoring programs within their organizations and in their recruiting processes so that it's around retention, particularly of people of color, those who are marginalized and do have those other challenges outside of what is required when they come into the workforce. So that's some of the work that I'm doing. Very excited about it. Would love to get some of your input on areas where you're working with young people in developing their skill levels. Because again, one of the things that I do is work with corporations and finding career or actually job opportunities for young people. But again, it has to be in a way where they aren't just put into a job and left by themselves to try to figure it out and navigate on their own.
Thank you, Claude. Yes, you've been a wonderful partner for Mentor Washington. I'm excited to continue working with you, especially on this workforce development stuff. You know, getting these young folks into these jobs and ensuring that they have ability to stay there and capacity to stay there. So appreciate that. Next up is, we're all coming from nonprofits, so it's great to bring our board president as our next guest to talk about the relationship of boards. So give it up for Harriet.
Thank you,
Bryant.
James.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And also thank you everyone for actually joining us today. This is phenomenal. Just looking at my screen, I'm so super excited. I wanted to talk a little bit about boards. I serve on quite a few boards. I have over 20 years experience of board experience and board development. I am currently the chair of Olympic College Board of Trustees, and also I'm the chair of the YWCA of Kitsap County. I actually serve on about 10 boards. You wonder how I do that? I do that because the simple fact that I am a servant leader, for one, and I love to open doors for those that those doors are not open for. So that's really important. So to be a part of a board and to be on a board is very important, because what it is that you can kind of support and control what happens in your communities. You can make sure that things are happening that's going to serve your communities. And on top of that, I actually have a nonprofit organization that's called Our Gems, Our Girls Empowered Through Mentoring and Service. We service about 400 girls and about 100 young men in all of our school districts in 18 schools. We are partners with the schools, and they actually give us class time, so we don't have to do the before and after school, because the simple fact that mentoring is so important to our students and so important to our schools, the teachers welcome the support. And so most of the boards that I serve on are not diverse. A matter of fact, my board for my nonprofit is 100% African American. We made sure of that because that was important. We wanted to know what it felt like to actually have a full board of people of color. Also, on the Olympic College Board of Trustees that I serve on, 80% of it is people of color, and that's historic because that's never happened. So I'm excited about that. So just serving on the boards is so important. And, if you can actually serve on a board, please do. I welcome you to do that because it actually helps open the doors for your mentees. We've graduated, not from our program, but helped graduate 192 students that are in our program. And the reason why is because we were there to open those doors. We were there to give them resources. We were there to give them support. Some of our young ladies have went on to Holy Names, UCLA, San Diego State, Cal State University. One's a champion volleyball player, and all of that was from the support that we were providing for them. We had them from age 7th grade all the way up until they're 24 now. Most of them are 24, going on to do great things, working on their masters. We actually started backpedaling, going backwards. Now we serve 8 and 9-year-olds up to 24. And so what we're doing with those 8 and 9-year-olds, we're teaching them what it is to have soft skills, what it is to have academic success, what it is to know about high GPAs, because you need that as you go on in life. Everybody, you know, kind of sways away from that at that grade level. But if you speak to our young ladies that are at the elementary level, they'll tell you exactly what a GPA is. So they focus on that and they compare that to their grades to make sure that their GPAs are high. And so just being involved in our community and being on those boards have really given me some success as to being able to share with other organizations, other communities, the success that we have here in Kitsap County. I just shared with James that I recently was awarded 2 awards, one for my organization and also one for my community service, which got me a Lifetime Achievement Award. And so that I was pretty excited about that. That's a really prestigious award to get a Lifetime Achievement. So I just love what I do. And if there's anything that I can do to help anybody else, you're welcome to stand on my shoulders. You're welcome to walk alongside me. You're welcome to ask me any questions. I'm just here to support. And I'm just super excited that I am the chair of Mentor Washington this year. We've got some great things going on. We've got some amazing staff. We have amazing board members, and we got a world-renowned executive director that we are just excited about. So with that, just feel free to reach out to me. And Clinton, it is so good to see you.
Thank you, Harriet. No, thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, let's give it up for Harriet for getting a Lifetime Achievement Award at 21. Yes, 21 years of age.
I wish.
Great. You know, representation matters so much. I'm glad you said that, Harriet. When I joined the South by Southwest board, I was the only person of color. And of all the educational programs they offered, it was only mine that was featured. Fast forward 6 years later, you see 1, teachers present, because you never saw teachers at South by. And now you see more diverse leadership. You have young people showcasing the work. So just representation and what we do together. We're going to jump into a panel presentation, and I'll be asking the people that just spoke some questions, and I'd love for any ideas you have percolating in the audience to just send to Laura. I'm going to just have them send to you, Laura. Is that cool? Or put into the chat, either way. But I'm going to start us off with a question. You know, if you feel like you've answered this already, don't feel obligated to speak, but if you really want to, jump in. Let's do it in 2 minutes or less. Let's think Twitter, not Facebook, in terms of our responses, in terms of length. So let's go with this one. What inequities and opportunity gaps that you saw led to your program's creation, and how does your program address these? You've each talked about it, you've touched on it individually, but if you want to provide some more context, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I'll jump out there real quick because for us, financial literacy, obviously, it's the wealth gap, because we realize that a lot of our indigenous and marginalized communities and communities of color, you know, that's what you see. And so what we've addressed is, you know, it starts with education, but what I didn't want to do was just, you know, give them a bunch of information and say, oh, here's how to invest, or here's how to do X, Y, Z, without providing support, because, you know, they would have questions and they can't call me because I'm running a business and I got trainers and they're all over the place. But having mentor support for someone they can call and get information, but then also starting to develop those skills that they need to know how to manage their own money, because it's not being taught in school on a regular basis. most, I shared the data with you about what the parents said. So we saw a huge gap there in terms of just the educational piece of it, and then the students not having mentor support, because most of our kids aren't going to go to a financial coach. They're not going to go to a financial planner or advisor. And so the mentoring piece for us, it just really worked because it's so personal, but it also gives them an opportunity to feel empowered because it's their idea, it's their plan. They come up with their own saving goals. And then equities in that, we see that there's not a lot of representation, which I'm working on right now, trying to create some type of an internship program to get some of our students introduced to a career pathway in the financial industry. Because when they walk into these banks, they don't see people that look like them. When they talk about financial advisors and planners, the majority of them don't look like the students that we serve and financial coaches. And so there's a huge gap there, but there's also this enormous opportunity for our young people to, because most of them don't even know that this is a career pathway. They don't, I get paid to manage other people's money and then show them how to manage their money and so on. So we saw that as a huge, huge gap in terms of trying to break the wealth gap and break these generational cycles of poverty.
James, I'd like to echo what Clinton is saying too. The data is now starting to really surface that shows the gap between people of color and whites in terms of value, family wealth, and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I've learned is, if a young person hasn't started their career pathway or at least started to develop their skills so that there's work that they're going to be able to do before they get to the age of 24, you're going to make likely 50% less than someone who started a career in their early 20s or in their teens. So you're already so far behind that to make up that gap is going to be extremely difficult if you don't have the education or anything outside of the skill development to support you. So it's imperative that we have mentoring for our youth at earlier ages to expose them to just what Clinton is talking about, where they can get engaged and start looking at things that are in their interest and pursuing them, because you really don't have a lot of time once you become an adult to make a decision on the direction you want to go. If you're going to be if you're going to provide for a family, if you're going to take care of yourself, you have to get on some type of career pathway.
Thank you.
I like to, I know I spoke a little bit about just having being culturally relevant and offering those services. So it just wasn't here. I'm from Louisiana, went to an HBCU, and there started my mentoring. So I became a mentor as a college student. And so moving here, seeing my husband do it for multiple years, but they were always focused on young men of color. So there was really nothing focused geared toward young women of color. And there are a lot of young women of color involved with the justice system. And so trying to help to interrupt or disrupt their activity within that system is kind of what led Phenomenal She. So we're a mentoring program, but we also offer other services. So we have one night we focus on mental health. We have a culturally relevant licensed therapist, and that's on a weekly basis. One night we have a STEM tutor that provides academic engagement as well as individual tutoring one night a week. And then another night we focus on life skills and development, and we have a 12-month curriculum. So we talk about those things that aren't often talked about in school, such as financial literacy, banking basics, health and wellness. So the list goes on, but it just wasn't here. We didn't see that. And so we wanted to create something like that for young girls that look like us so they could see what their opportunity. We want them to reach their full potential. And if they see someone that looks like them, that have gone through similar obstacles or have family members that have done that, then they're more likely to achieve success.
Thank you, Carlicia.
Yeah, James, if I could just jump in just real quick. One thing we found is that we do etiquette etiquette is so important. You know, they have to learn to respect each other. They have to know that they're in a sisterhood or a brotherhood. And so we start out with that first, because if you don't have that respect, then, you know, for yourself and for others, then you won't go very far. And so we actually teach that etiquette. We actually take a classroom and transform it into a restaurant. We teach them dining etiquette. We teach them Zoom etiquette. We teach them cell phone etiquette. All the etiquettes we could think of, we teach them, because first of all, they need to grow in that area first. So, and also we teach a lot about self-love, you know, because once they get those, all the rest will follow. And so then we go into all of the academic success and things like that. And so our mentors are committed to a 10-year commitment to each child. And we group mentor. And why we group mentor is the simple fact that we can't be all in all places at all times. And so if we've got one of our mentors training, we've got another person that's kind of observing and checking things out, and others supporting, that gives you a full room, a gamut of helping all those students. And so the group mentoring actually lets them know that when we're not available, they have their brotherhood or sisterhood that they can rely on. They have peers that they can rely on, and that's really important. So that's one of the reasons why we choose to group mentor. We started in 2008. We are now 2020, 12 years later. And like I said, they have gone on. As a matter of fact, we just did a Zoom meeting with our OGs. We call them OGs, our older gems. They came back to tell us about their journeys and where they are, you know, their business, they're entrepreneurs, they're pursuing masters, they're lieutenants in the military, they're doing all that. And they reference it all the way back to the time when we got them in 6th and 7th grade. And next time we're on, I'll share some of the stories that they talked about, some of the things that they said. We connect with the superintendents at the school because we want to take it to the highest level to make sure that that support is up there. When you start with the support at the superintendent level, all the rest of that's going to fall in place. And so that's really important. But I just wanted to express that etiquette is so important, so important. We've even did that for the juvenile detention. We actually had them, we invited them to our recreation center, and we set up an actual restaurant for them. We served them a 5-course meal, and we brought in the administrators and the directors at the juvenile center, and it was hands down amazing. It works, you guys, just so you know.
Thank you. You know, Harry, you said it works. You've mentioned some successes. I'm interested in hearing, what other outcomes have you seen for programs designed to address those gaps and inequities for young people of color? And this is for everyone. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. The inequities that we find, this is really funny because we started out 3 African-American women doing this, and we built it up to about 20 mentors now. But it was just amazing that we've got more people that were non-people of color to be in those programs. And so now then the inequities we now is trying to make sure that our children, our people, children that look like us are involved, and that we are reaching out to them as well. Because I think what it is that these parents were realizing that, hey, you know, there's some things that non-people of color are not teaching our kids as well. And so I think inequity is making sure that we actually serve diverse populations, but we need to make sure that it's particularly people of color and Black children as well. So that's what I find in our area here in Kitsap County. I know probably a lot of you in your areas don't probably experience that, but we do. Because we're a military town, so they're coming and going constantly. And so we just got to make sure that when they leave us, they leave with something in their toolkit. And so that's the problem we have here, is actually being able to connect with most of our African-American children and children of color to make sure that they're getting exactly what they're needed, the history, the opportunity to see somebody that looks like them, the opportunity to have a voice. And so that's what we're working on here in Kitsap County.
Thank you.
So for me, some of the successes that I've seen as a result is, you know, higher graduation rates, increase enrollment in post-secondary programs, less teen pregnancy. That's just to name a few.
Yeah. Well, some of the successes that we've seen for us is that we've had a large number of our students, and when I first put the program together, I was like, well, 18 to 24-year-olds, because I don't want to deal with the youngers and the liability of that. But this was like, no, don't leave us out. And it was an easy transition for us because you can be as young as 16 years old and open a checking account without parental consent. And so we lowered the number to 16 to add those kids. And so we've seen a high number percentage of our students open their first checking or savings account. And it's really been empowering. We've had 2 young men who came in and they've gone on to be entrepreneurs and start their own business. So we connected them. Their mentors were businessmen in the community. So they went through the financial program that we have, and then they went on to open their own business. And then we've seen a significant amount. Oh, and the other thing too is we've also, because we partner with 2 of the open door schools, alternative schools in the state, and we're the only program that the school districts allow. If the students complete 30 hours of our curriculum, they'll give them a quarter high school credit. And so they can use that either toward 3rd year math or toward an elective. And so we've seen a significant amount of our students retrieve high school credit, as well as we've seen a number of students reported as well an increase in their savings, because probably about 90% of our students complete the program with some type of household or individual budget that they use. And they really appreciated that, as well as we see a lot of students in our program, some successes around managing their paychecks, because we didn't realize how many of our students actually worked until COVID happened, and then their parents got furloughed, and then their income became like the breadwinner income for the family. And so the budgeting class and the savings class really was impactful for them, because it helped them to be able to manage the money. And they weren't working a lot of hours, some of them were, but so we've seen some successes in quite a few areas where the students have implemented the tools that we've taught them in the financial classes.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Clint and Harriet. Trillium, interested to hear anything you'd like to share about successes and outcomes, and you as well, Mike or Jared.
We'll report back in a little while. This is a pilot program, so
right.
I can tell you what we wrote down as our outcomes. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. To speak a little bit to that previous question about gaps, I think one thing that I would highlight here in the aspirational outcomes department is that this mentoring program for me, from that community-wide prevention strategy viewpoint, is a means. And that's because these youth are like, what we're building up is youth who can then share with each other and us like what they see as the gaps in our community, and then they can go about creating and telling us what to do. So that's kind of just like this other texture to that gaps convo too, especially as we're seeing like, a primarily white community that has, for lots of reasons, a Latino community that's pretty separate a lot of the time, and Caucasian community that's pretty separate here. So figuring out ways that we can listen to each other more, besides just being like, why don't they, I keep on sending translated emails, but I'm just not really getting anything. So that's there too.
Thank you. I mean, yes, when the school districts went to online, you just made me think of something. They sent out like, hey, if you need a computer, sign up here, but they sent it via email, where many of the people didn't have computers to check. So it's that same, like, why are they doing anything? Well, there's many different reasons why that's happening. Next question, you talked about inclusivity and equity. How can programs work to be more inclusive and equitable? And any suggestions? I know you're doing something pilot, and as you are as well, Mike and Jared, just interested in how can people be more inclusive and equitable in their approach?
Yeah, James, it's a really good question. And, for I see a lot of the conversations around schools and administrators and teachers, and, I am a school administrator, and there are a lot of issues with our education system in Washington. Systemic racism is real, and while it was none of our faults that it exists, it's our responsibility to fix it and to make things better moving forward. So I would say one of the biggest benefits out of all of this is the progression. And 90% of our school administrators in the state of Washington are Caucasian. And we were all trained in standards that were colorblind. They didn't really talk about race, ethnicity, different cultures' experiences to schools, and how your teaching pedagogy should change. All those kind of things are new within the last 8 to 10 years. So in addition, there's no requirements for school administrators to be trained in these things. So once I get my school administration credentials, the requirement right now is that it's 100 hours of professional development every 5 years, and that can be in anything. And I told my friends about this. I took a welding class 4 years ago, and that counted. I know how to weld. That's amazing, but it's not helping me serve my community. It's not opening my eyes to blind spots or to question my interactions, or how I create more outreach for my community, or how I partner with my community. So along with the Nisqually tribe and Central Latino, we put a draft piece of legislation out to Representative Sharon Tomiko Santos, and requesting that school leaders be trained in anti-racist school leadership, requesting that they be trained in government-to-government partnerships with Indigenous peoples, and in transformational leadership. And we asked for something real small. We asked for 25 hours every 5 years for school administrators, and we got the news last night that Ms. Santos is going to spearhead this, and she is going to extend that to all educators across the state of Washington. Anybody who holds a certificated license in the state of Washington will need to be trained in anti-racist pedagogy, leadership strategies, but also the power of government to government. So please take a look for that when the legislation starts up here soon. It's about 5 to 10 years of progress that possibly being made real quick. So please take a look out for it. But it's the power of the relationships that we build when communities partner with schools, and you have some folks who are in schools who are people who look like me, who are saying the things I'm saying, like systematic racism does exist. Jared, do you add anything to that?
Yeah, a lot of it is about, it's about creating that space, and centering Indigenous knowledge. And I think one thing that's really empowered the students that have been able to participate with us is that we elevate and we validate Indigenous knowledges, and we make sure that we share with all of our staff and all of our students like the power and knowledge that culture bearers have as educators. And one of the things that kind of grew simultaneously with our mentoring program was our Native Studies courses here in our district. And so the great thing about the mentoring program, in addition to our other work, is that we are actually putting credit. And so the system is validating that knowledge and that system as being valuable knowledge for all people to have access to. And by recognizing that knowledge, we recognize the depth of assets that all of our Indigenous students have every day. And then I would say the other important thing is that the nice thing with like mentoring programs is that we've been able to invite other district staff to participate in these learning opportunities. And that really expands the community. And I feel like it helps sort of lessen the anxiety with walking into a different world and getting to see your students in a different way, to see them as leaders and as knowledge bearers, and to see the wealth of knowledge and assets and leadership within their various tribal communities. And so the combination of participation, visibility, space, and acknowledgement creates a really powerful structure for long-term Native student engagement with public education. And in such a way that even though like our program was only able to run for a short while before the pandemic, we had at least one student that transferred from our district and tried to start it in her new high school. And everything that we were able to get started and the relationships and the process and the protocol that we followed was sort of her guide to say, we did this once again, this is important work. I now have a framework with which to continue this change wherever I go. So yeah, once you kind of create that equitable space, that sense of leadership, that pride, and that sense of security within their school is really really calling on all that long generational resilient strength.
Thank you. You know, we've been talking about, and I've been hearing a strong need for mentoring across many different areas of growth and areas of interest for young people. So first, I'm gonna ask this one for Clinton, but this can apply to many different fields. How can community mentor programs get better connected specifically to justice-involved youth? And then why is that a race equity consideration?
Good question. I think that, you know, one of the ways, because it's not for everybody. So this is a population that a lot of folks don't want to work with. But I think that if we connect with because they want individuals to come into the facilities, but I'm also about the transition piece too, because everybody won't get to go to the facility. And so part of how we can get connected is really looking at what type of services and programs without reduplicating anything, but in terms of the mentoring, connecting these young people with mentors as soon as they transition out, because they want them, they've asked for it. And then being able to have folks that, you know, desire to go in, make the connection with them prior to getting out, which is what we're trying to do, is bridge that gap and make that connection with them prior to getting out, so that then they can have a trusted adult, because that's what they've asked for, having trusted adults in their life and being able to connect with folks in particular that look like them. And so one, it could be having a relationship with them prior to getting out, going in and facilitating a meeting. And maybe even if you don't facilitate a group, you can connect with the youth that you can mentor, because you can get on their visiting list. You don't have to have a program that you're going in to be a part of. But the transition piece is really huge, is that them being able to have a connection with a program, and for us sharing those resources and us connecting with each other and making sure that we're directing them to these resources that are available for them. But it really is about making that connection prior to them getting out, either through a program that's already going into the facilities, and definitely once they transition out, because they spoke a lot about this in our conversation with them a couple of weeks ago, about the fear of transitioning out and not having that strong support circle, because most of them realize that, you know, they're maybe in some cases their family circle is not the most positive or you know, most encouraging, or a lot of them were unsure where they were going to live, and so on and so on. And so just making that connection with them in that way. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Why is it a racial equity consideration?
It's a racial equity consideration because we know that when youth transition out, there's a higher recidivism rate for young people of color. We know that. And we know that more young people of color are just as involved than any other ethnicity and group of youth. And so finding and these programs, and it's not a finger point at any of them, but the kind of shotgun blast approach that all these evidence-based programs, they work for every demographics, is just not true. And so finding programs that really speak to the needs of the students and provide those students with what they need, because every Black kid doesn't need the same thing, right? Every Native kid doesn't need the same thing. So having programs that come together and partner and really provide, a landscape of services and opportunities for our youth is really what will benefit them.
Thank you. And then I have a question for everyone. And I'm asking this as the voice of mentoring in the state. What is the future of mentoring from your perspective, individually and organizationally, from your perspectives? What is the future of mentoring?
Gosh, James, the future of mentoring is now. It's right now. It's needed across the board, no matter what area or arena you're in. Everybody needs some mentoring right now. We're in this pandemic. We don't know when we're going to get out of it. And so right now, our kids are not going to school. They're not getting up in the mornings. They cannot connect with their peers. The parents are going through. And so to have a trusted mentor that they can rely on, that they can talk to and feel. 2 times a month, we're inside the juvenile justice system. We are in there Zooming. We're actually looking at them in orange suits and white socks and slippers. And they have dreams and goals just like everybody else, and they feel isolated. And most of our kids and our families are isolated right now. I was just on a Zoom meeting with the Boys and Girls Club. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out how then they can implement mentoring. So I say it's now, right now. And that's what it looks like in the future. It is right now.
Hi, I'm Winston Bell with The Game of Life, and I presented a little while back for Mentoring Washington, maybe the same day Harriet and her group presenting it. I don't want to take too much time, but the future of mentoring, I believe today is far more valuable than even the schools, especially for the Black and brown population. I think when Harriet was talking about how they started, schools would look at that as, oh, that's nice. They're coming in to do something for the little Black kid. So that's pretty nice. But now those same schools are begging us to come in because the research and the data has shown that they're leading our schools, our kids, straight to the school to prison pipeline. And that's not just something we're coming up with anymore. The actual data shows that. So these mentoring programs are now taking the place of schools. So I just wanted to add that a little bit.
Appreciate that, Winston. Yeah, for sure.
I would also add that right now, from that community, like I'm in a lot of community meetings right now with a lot of people who are really scared for the mental health of our youth and families, and asking what can we do now? And there's so many things that we can't do. And there's so many parts of this that we cannot resolve regarding COVID. And our mentor program is becoming one of the hubs of we can in our community, because what people say again and again is that what we need is connection. We need some way to bring people together. So I'm feeling very hopeful that there's so much creativity and nimbleness in mentor programs across the country to leverage what they already have as established practices to really fuel us through this time.
Yeah,
Hi, I'm Carolina. I'm Carolina Adriansen with Big Brothers Big Sisters, Columbia Northwest. And to piggyback on what the young lady just said from Trillium, I couldn't agree more. I think we're definitely looking at engagement, parent engagement, letting us know what they need, how we can come in and support as a mentoring organization. I'm thinking virtual, it is here to stay. I think the option for in-person will someday return, and we will adapt and make that shift when needed. And also I see, because of the political climate, reverse mentoring. Our littles telling us what they need, how we should be moving in what direction, and listening to that. Let them take the lead to the best degree that they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I kind of feel like from the work that I've been doing with our students is I feel like the future of mentoring is going to be community building. Our connections with each other have gone under a lot of strain, and for many of our students, those connections, have been able to happen at school, and they've lost that structure and that time, and that does lead to serious consequences for mental health and their sense of future and their sense of grounding. And then you also have the struggles at home, right? And so the students are they've lost a lot of the tools or access to the ability for self-care. And I think we're going to have lingering consequences from that in the future. And I feel like the opportunity to help students kind of come together and help facilitate ways for them to find balance and some sense of harmony, even ceremony, in order to help them kind of rebuild their strength and their sense of connectedness with one another, I think is going to be important for long-term sustaining work for our young people. And I also think too that the world's been shaken pretty hard, and I feel part of that community can really be work that helps to raise and empower student voice to help kind of develop their own sense of advocacy. Because like it was mentioned, like I kind of agree, like remote learning just might end up being a regular part of our future. And so how do we help students play a more active role in being able to express?
Looks like you froze, Jared.
I think, James, one part of that too, where we're working is the building more peer-to-peer mentoring, because we have two of my alumni students that are on my board. So we're giving them that experience, but we also have a lot of our youth who have gone through the program to help co-facilitate workshops, but also just in providing that opportunity, like Jarrett was saying, for student voice and to empower them, because, there's only one of us and a gang of them, right? And peers listen to peers more than they listen to us. And so being able to empower the peers with a mentor that can, mentor them. But I really think part of the future of mentoring really is engaging the youth more and allowing them to be a part of that mentoring process as well, because a lot of them want to be mentors. And so we've been working to try to, make sure that peer-to-peer mentoring piece is a part of what helps us to continue to expand our reach as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, crew. Before we turn it over to everyone else to ask questions for a Q&A, Laura, will you take us through some of the next steps we're talking about? I want to say thank you, first of all. This isn't over. I just want to say thank you in advance and turn it over to Laura real quick. We can't hear you, Laura.
Sorry. Yeah, so we just wanted to, the Q&A portion will kind of be what we wrap up with. But before that happens, we wanted to share some of our next steps as Mentor Washington, because this isn't it for us. And so we hope that you all will kind of join along with us in this kind of process and what we'll be doing. So here's our next steps page. We kind of have two different timelines. We have the things that we want to do and that we're planning to do in the next 6 months. And then we also have these ideas for the next year and a half. So for the next 6 months, National Mentoring Month is in January. So we're gearing up to do a lot with that. And part of this is advocating for equitable mentoring with the legislature and making sure that that's being recognized by the folks who control the money. So having conversation with them on that. We will also be starting 2 different series an equity series for programs. And this is all in conjunction with the Western Educational Equity Assistance Center. And that will begin in February or March and go through about June of this next year. And that's going to be specifically for programs. And then we also have this Leading for Equity series for boards. And this will be open for all mentor programs and their boards, whoever wants to participate. But if we want to have mentoring be equitable and be inclusive, our boards, like Harriet was saying earlier, our boards have to kind of exist in that realm as well. So how can they help their programs be that? And then we'll also be having some more topic specific trainings with recruitment. How do we recruit in an equitable way? How do we take those racial considerations and those cultural considerations into our recruitment processes? Community collaboration, mentor training. How can we kind of look at those and make them more culturally appropriate and more racially aware? And then between July and June of 2022, we'll be conducting some learning communities. So our hope is that these learning communities are coming out of the programs that are engaging and participating in the equity series with Western Educational Equity Assistance Center. And through those learning communities, they'll have bi-monthly trainings with some contracted experts to really dive deep into policies and procedures, to really dive deep in what are your recruitment strategies. Let's look at your mentor training that you do for all of your mentors, and how can it be adjusted and kind of recreated and add some things in there. They'll also meet with their learning communities on the off months. And that's where they can kind of engage with each other and have those conversations. We'll have continued topic specific trainings, and then we'll kind of be adding in engaging in national conversations with Mentor National and some other national organizations. So if you would like to sign up for the equity series, and if you would like more information on leading for equity with your board, please feel free to reach out to me. We don't have specific times set up yet, so we don't have the link to register. But if you would like to get on the list to register, please let me know and email me. We can have about 100 folks participate in that. So we anticipate that we'll probably be full. So if you want to participate, please let me know and we can put you on the list. So those are our next steps. We're really looking forward to working in this way in the next year and a half. So we really hope to have you all kind of join us for that.
Thanks, Laura. As questions are starting to come in, I just have to say that when you wrote the next 6 months and you put June, I said, Laura, that's a year from now, but it's not. Time has gone by so quickly. I forgot that June is in 6 months. Are there any questions from the participants for our lovely, amazing expertise of panelists that have graced this Zoom chat?
Yeah, I got a couple questions here. This is Tom Pinella. I'm on loan through DCYF to work with Mentor Washington as a loaned executive. First, I want to acknowledge there's a Winston Bell. I was over at WSU and I had to add up how long ago I seen him. 30 years. 30 years. I had to use my calculator, my phone calculator. I said, well, 1990, what is that today? So, hey, what's happening, Winston, good seeing you. So my question is that around, family support, you talked about recruiting mentors of color. If you could share some of the strategies for, as you go out and you try to get mentors of color, and are there barriers? Will you take folks with lived experience? Then, in communities of color, family is really the nucleus. How do you include families? So there's a couple questions in there.
You know what, Tom? What we do is we're actually we solely relied on the counselors at the schools for background checks. When we had somebody, they would go through the school. That was one step we didn't have to worry about. And that was another step that the school didn't have to worry about. And then also they gave us an opportunity to do mentor training for their whole school district for every volunteer that came through that school district. So that was really helpful. And then as we traveled throughout the years, we actually started getting referrals by word of mouth. And when someone sees something that's very successful and that's making a difference in the lives of their children and their communities, they want to come on board. And another thing too is recruiting, making it a full circle, bring mentors as they grow older into caring adults to come back and mentor with you as well. So that's one way that we recruited in our organization. And that really helped because we were growing the mentors as we were doing the program.
I think for us, we're still fairly new. We were established in 2018, and so we definitely have barriers in it because I spoke to it in my presentation. We're very intentional in who we bring in to have relationships and build relationships with our youth because they've already gone through so much, and so the barriers are finding culturally relevant mentors that will commit to the time commitment that we're looking for. And so we go to community events pre-COVID. Right now, just joining any type of, community events hosted virtually, explaining that we are looking for these type of mentors and encouraging them to apply to become mentors with us. But the barriers are, we have about 10 mentors, which is not a lot, but again, we're intentional. We want to make sure that we have someone that's going to be there for the youth long term. And so I hope that answered your question. So
yes.
So definitely
hear the different strategies that folks had and stuff like that.
I also spoke to, and we want to do more of this, but I come from corporate world. And so within the corporate world, I sat on the board of our team member network. And so I know that there's resources there. And so we've reached out to like Amazon and Boeing and Wells Fargo, some of those boards, trying to get talent from there because we definitely want lived experiences, but we also want to balance up professionals so that they can see that the sky's the limit and what they can do.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Another barrier is male mentors. That's a huge barrier. We can get female mentors all day long, but I tell you, the male mentors are really scarce. And if there's something that we can create or do to attract more male mentors, that would be great. Yes, there is a commitment, and our kids want to have some sustainability. I give you a prime example. One of my young ladies that we got in 7th grade, she's now 24. I asked her, I said, why were you so consistent, but you never participated? You never said anything. She said, because I wanted sustainability. I wanted to know that I wanted to check and see if you were going to be there for me first before I even started engaging. And so she said that when she was going on, her parents would say they were going on vacation. They never went back home. So they were house hopping. And so she didn't trust anybody because she felt that people came into her life and then immediately they were gone. Her friends came into her lives and immediately they were gone. And it was no fault of hers. It was, just her parents. And that was just the way it was. And finally, when she landed in this program in 7th grade, she is now that lieutenant in the Marines. Actually, she was headed to Juilliard, to be honest with you. And the parents, she had 2 brothers, one younger and one older. The brother went to WSU. Well, the mom and dad wanted her to go to WSU to be in the shadows of her brother. And she said, absolutely not. That was not my goal. I'm a musician. I play 5 different instruments. I've made all the state recitals. Why should I give in to go to WSU when it's not my goal, my dream? And so someone talked to her about playing for the military band in the Marines. And she just took it and ran with it. And so it's just being there to have that stability, and that's what they look for, and we need that. And so, but if we could get more male mentors, some kind of training for male mentors, that would be excellent, because that's what we needed, because that is who is locked up and incarcerated is our young men, our boys, our males. They're locked up. I just happened to, like I said, was on a call at juvenile detention on a Zoom. We're in Zoom. And the young man was saying that he is enrolled in Olympic College, but he's incarcerated. And sure enough, one of our mentors that is a director over at the college, she was trying to get into the Zoom. As soon as we got her in, she introduced herself and his eyes just lit up like, oh my gosh, now, you know, I've got a resource. I've got somebody I can actually talk to that understands where I am at this point in time and is not going to judge me. And so that's the thing. The inequities is having those male mentors there for those young men that are incarcerated and those that really don't have the father figures in their home.
I think you said something important, Harriet, with the Marines. And I'm not the Marines specifically, but the band. Creatives. I got into mentoring while I was an actor, not when I was an educator. So the creative fields and creative sectors are often overlooked because creativity is something you can't touch. Creative fields are, you know, not always consistent in terms of employment. However, many creatives who've made a living out of it are fantastic mentors because they have been able to be consistent in their work. Well, and you know, I'll speak for myself. Someone invited me to speak to a classroom of young people many, many years ago about the time I was an actor. And I was like, yeah, sure, happily. And that's when I got into being a mentor. And I was like, oh, you actually need this. I thought I was living some journeyman life devoid of certainty. But I've set my own pace. And that's what a lot of young people need, is that insight. Like, how do I do this for myself? What did you do? How can I model or do something completely different? And that's what the creative sectors provide, that critical thinking about your own worldview. So I just wanted to big that up in terms of where to find or diversify the mentoring world is, let's look at the creative sectors.
How do you,
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, how do you reach them?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Carlicia. That's part of my role now as the leader of Mentor Washington. I'm starting to connect the creative sectors to the mentoring fields. There's going to be a lot more creative ways. You know, I'm part of a international network called the International Teaching Artists Consortium, and we work around the world. And most of us are both professional artists and also serve young people across the world. So soon come, as they say, soon come. Yeah.
There was a question earlier that I'll kind of paraphrase that came up in the chat from Delphinia. So in programs that are not exclusively for BIPOC youth, but that like have been created to kind of support BIPOC youth voice in these groups, that it sounds like they're going really well. And so you have an influx of white youth that are wanting to join. How do you kind of balance this wanting to create this space that's inclusive while also not wanting to inundate it with the predominant culture? Delphinia, did I kind of get that correctly? Please.
So much more eloquently than I did. So thank you. And yeah, I just wanted to say, like, so I work out on San Juan Island, and I was really excited to see Trillium on this call because I knew a little bit about the work that she was doing. So I'm going to talk to her more about what she's doing with Nasima. But yeah, I guess what we're running up against, you know, is that we have such a tiny population, and we naturally had an influx of Latinx youth come into the mentoring program, and now we are having, you know, an emergence of like white youth come into the program. And I do feel really lucky because this fall, I was able to do in-person group mentoring programs for small cohorts, and we created a cooking club. So we're trying to really create food as this universal platform for coming together. But I feel challenged by just trying to figure out, I mean, yeah, how to have these groups that are like inclusive, but also, where we can have more representation and more leadership. Because I know that, my job is to write myself out of a job, but it's going to take time, and I need some tools in the meantime.
Any thoughts from our panelists on kind of how to create that balance, or maybe some just suggestions?
I can jump in because I hear about this quite a bit. There's a couple of students I've had when we've had group get-togethers, and just like sort of like my regular job, not necessarily our partnership program, but like, yeah, I'll get together and then just sitting at the table, it's like, they're not Native, what are they doing here? But I would say that that's fairly uncommon, but it is really important because we do have students that definitely need that space of people like them, that shared experience. Because at our high school, we have, the most diverse student population here, but a lot of the times our students don't have an opportunity to really be with themselves, because of class schedules in life. They may not have the opportunities to interact with, friends and peers, or in our case, students from different tribes. So yeah, you do have that sort of that difficult balance of like providing the space for this group of students, but also realizing like there could be an opportunity to kind of expand allyship or, sharing that culture and providing an opportunity for students to actually be able to have that sense of pride to share this. Like this is a unique opportunity for you to come into my world, and you can kind of when you invite people in, then the person inviting can inherently be their own mentor, right? Because they're mentoring a friend or a classmate. So I think it's just kind of a delicate balance. I don't think there is a clear answer. I feel like each group of students is going to have different needs that we need to honor. I feel like, if we go in providing a space for a group of students, it's kind of up to them for them to decide who they want to be, involved for, because each group is going to have different needs from time to time. So yeah, just play it by ear, I guess.
I think, Jared, you make a very good point. It is an opportunity. One of the things that I think we have to be mindful of is we've kind of established this climate of not including. Young people, it wouldn't happen if they had their own choice of who they select and include. For the most part, they're very open to include everyone. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we got to kind of stand back and allow for them to do that and not do what we've done and separate and segregate.
Yeah, I would add to that. I can speak from a different language, different perspective. When I was at Morehouse, we had quite a few white students that were some of my classmates, but it was never a question that Morehouse was a school for Black men, right? So you had white men in classes with us, but it was always like, you're welcome in this class, you're invited, you belong here, but never doubt the fact that the curriculum, the pedagogy, the practices is for Black leadership. And then you had more, one of my dentists went to Howard, a white dude. And so he's, I sit in the chair and he's like, "Oh, you went to Morehouse? I'm sorry to hear that. I went to Howard." And we had a good banter back and forth. And I was like, wait, my white dentist went to Howard. And there's some brotherhood just from that alone, even though we had nothing in common except the fact that we both went to HBCUs. We had shared knowledge, we had shared experiences, and then our community was that much tighter. So I feel the same way about that brother as I do about Kamala Harris, who went to Howard. It's sad they didn't get to Morehouse, but it is what it is.
It's more about the quality of the social connection.
Exactly.
It comes down to, basically, it's almost like if you're a member of a team. When you bond as a team, the color part of it doesn't come into it. It's basically everybody knowing their role and accepting each other for who they are.
Well, and we create a community contract and whatnot. It's just like I've been looking for resources for more conversations around race and class for 10 to 12-year-olds, and I'm not finding a ton. But yeah, everything that you have said has been super helpful. Thank you.
I would ask the 10 to 12-year-olds, like, what are your interests? What do you want to talk about? I talk about this frequently, but culturally responsive pedagogy. If a child cannot learn the way you teach, you must teach the way they learn. So what are your interests? Why do you want to be in this classroom? Great. That's information from me. If you are a battery on a cell phone, are you at 25%? Do you go to low power mode, or are you at 100? Where are you? Like what kind of apple juice, like plug into the Apple iPhone, what kind of apple juice do you need to be functional? Because we can be the plug, but you have to be willing to allow our knowledge to be transmittable or transmutable, right? But we're definitely the plug.
James, this is Carolina Adriansen from Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
Yes.
I think you just sparked on a thought that I had regarding Tom Pinella's question regarding recruitment. I think that's where I'm at right now. Our recruitment approach for men isn't working. So I am trying to revisit, regroup, reassess, what is it going to take to bring our men in? We need more men allies. We need more success stories to share with the community about what mentoring means. I think there's also a misconception of the responsibility to take on. I think we need to do a better job educating the community or men or just all individuals about what the expectation of mentoring is. Anybody could be a mentor. We just expect a good heart, a solid dedication, and the rest will evolve as it needs to. So to answer your question, Tom, I think I have to pivot to what James said. I'm really working through this to see what approach we need to adapt moving forward.
Thank you.
You know, one way we recruited for the male mentors in our program is that because the girls were so successful and we had up to 400 girls and they wanted gentlemen. You know, these girls, we teach them, the first thing we teach them how to be a lady, and we also teach the girls how to be a gentleman. Because the reason we do that, we want them to be able to identify gentlemen. And so the girls program was very successful. And so what we did is we could not recruit the male mentors. So we spoke with the principals. And, you know, the actual principal actually wanted the program, both programs in a school. So he went out and recruited the male mentors. And so that's how we ran those two programs in those schools, because we heavily relied on the schools and their connections. And they came through for us for the male mentors. We have a male mentor that is a special agent. His job actually gave him an opportunity to get off twice a month for 2 hours to actually mentor. His class started out with 2 young men and it ended up with 28. And so it works if you make the commitment. And most of the time, you know, a good person, a good mentor will not let those children down, and they will stick with them. And so, so that's the main thing, is to know what your passion is. Are you passionate about what you're doing? And because if you're not, they're going to call you a fake. They're going to call you out on it. So we need it, and we need to figure out how we can do better on both sides, actually, not just male mentors, but on both sides. We can always grow and learn more and do better, but it's really a call for males to be there for our young men.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping that mentor watch. Yeah.
Right. And Caroline, I'm a mentor here in Thurston County for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and being a male, and I've recruited quite a few of my friends, male friends, to mentor as well. And it all starts with just the terminology. You know, sometimes I use the word coaching. You know, you can be a coach, and many times, many of my male counterparts, I'm not skilled enough to do that. I said, well, can you listen? You can listen to a kid, and that's it. You don't have to do more than that. Get in there, share what you know. You don't have to be a sports celebrity, or you don't have to do a lot of things. Just be yourself. Can you be authentic? And doing it that way, and then the most important part is just tell them there is a time commitment. We do not want you to enter into a relationship that you're going to make a kid absent. They have enough, dysfunction and just, people in and out of their lives. You have to make a commitment. And if you can do that, you can become a mentor. And so, but I think that for the male mentors, at least in my neighborhood down here, it really is word of mouth to other male mentors, talking about their experience and what they're going through. I've taken folks down to our institutions, but so I don't got anything to offer a kid right there. You have a lot to offer right there, so, and then making it work with. So that's what I do here in town, in my town.
Thank you. And I think knowing your targeted audience. I'm Latina, Hispanic, and had you asked me to become a mentor at 22, 23, even 30, I would have said, no way. I have nephews that I need to mentor. They are my priority. I would feel a sense of guilt if I were to mentor somebody else outside of my family. So now, come today, my nephews are good, they're straight, they're on their own. Now I could mentor other children. So again, knowing your targeted audience, where they're at, getting them at the right time.
Speaking of the right time, it is almost 3:30, and that means our session's coming to an end. So first, I want to thank everyone for participating and for joining us. Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you, Mike, Jared, Carlicia, Trillium, and Sergio, and Brenda, who are offline. Laura, Vic, Tom, thanks, and everyone. Clinton, we're doing this together. Let's keep making magic happen. Bless up, as we say.
Thank you. You all have a great day.
You as well. Take care.
Bye-bye.